Dimas. Thank you so much for
Hi,
yes, thank you so much for taking your time to have a
thanks for
chat
having me.
with us. I hope you're doing well, and it's a shame that we couldn't be together to do this interview.
But still, safety is a must. Okay, now let's talk about classic cars.
Well, classic cars or bikes, it's really nostalgic. So for some people, the reason they bought certain classic cars because it reminds them of their young age. I have a few friends that buy some cars because when they were a kid, their parents used to drive them to school in that cars. Um, for some, classic cars is a revenge because when they were a kid, they saw these beautiful cars and maybe they didn't have enough money to buy it, and then many years later, after they have a job, they have a good money and everything, they want to have that car. They finally have the chance to buy that car. Within my group of friends, uh, usually people who buy classic cars are sometimes are most of them are older than me, but uh, today we see an increasing numbers of youngsters buy a classic car. So instead of buying a new car, out of a dealer, they started to think that maybe I should buy a car from the 90s or from the 80s.
Is it worth for investment? Like, why? What do you think about it?
I would say it really depends on the type of the car or a bike. As my friend says, not all rocks are gold, only some of them are gold. So we saw that some of these models really, really going up to the moon compared to maybe 10 years or even 20 years ago. We have some cars that maybe in the 12 years ago, it was around 200 or 300 million rupiah. Now the price are going up to above $1 billion rupiah.
If they want to start this investment, like what kind of car, like how do they know that this will worth more if we sell it in
Well, I
future?
always say to my friend that you better buy a classic car because you like it instead of looking for a return in the future. But in general rules, usually European cars tends to give higher return, and then the car has to be rare, not extremely rare, but rare enough. The car has to be more or less reliable, not very unreliable, but more or less reliable. The spare parts are um, available on the market. The classic Vespa is usually tend to go higher every year, like literally every year. Like this year, maybe it will cost around 30 million. Next year, it could go up to 40 million. We saw really high spikes during this pandemic because people didn't go anywhere. Classic car is a very diverse market. There is no like rule of thumb for which one is higher in resale price or which one is lower. Usually, it's really based on the condition of the car.
Okay, so in Indonesia right now, what is the current trend about like buying and selling classic cars?
Actually, some of my friends are doing it, so they are buying and selling classic cars. And as from what I can see, it's actually returning. Their return is actually quite good, but it's not as easy as it seems, though. Uh, it's a bit different with the new cars, where you can also buy and sell newer car, but in a classic car, what you have to have is reputation. Maybe sometimes sourcing a classic car is not that difficult, but building a good reputation, that can take but can take maybe 1, 2, or even 5 years to build. So yeah, so if you are watching this wanting to buy and sell classic car, just make sure you have a good reputation first.
We already talked about the classic cars, uh, and it's like a long-term investment. And how about modern vehicles, cars, or maybe motorcycles? Is it worth for investment? Like, what do you take on that?
My answer will be yes. But again, it really depends on the models. There are some newer bikes that can be categorized as investment. Well, maybe investment usually is a long-term understanding. When we say investment, usually the time span is a long-term. But if you want to say in the short term, maybe let's say that the resale price is higher than the retail price. So if that's the case, then some of the bikes are like that. There are some limited edition bikes from Vespa and also from Honda. They only sell like a few hundreds per year or a few thousand, and the resale price in the secondary market is higher than the retail price. For cars, only a few type of cars is very limited. So the previous case was the Suzuki Jimny that goes almost twice as the retail price, and also there are some newer car. I think the Toyota Land Cruiser, the newer one, the secondary market is higher than the retail market. But that's also because of a few factors. One of them is the chip shortage. So as we know, right now globally, chips are shortage everywhere. So that really impacts the car market as well. And also, I think some of the regulation also impact the price. We have a import quota and another regulation that also makes the car becomes a bit more expensive than the retail price. So as long as the demand is there and the supply is not there, so demand and supply, then the price will go higher.
And last question, how do you differentiate between buying and selling, investing between classic and modern cars?
For newer car, the problem is usually sourcing the car itself. So it's not that easy to get a retail price for some certain limited bikes or cars. For old cars, the problem is not only the sourcing but to maintaining it. As with cars, older cars usually have a higher maintenance cost than a newer car. Sometimes you have to go to the workshop more often with the classic car instead of, but not with the newer car.
We'll keep that in mind, of course, for everyone. Once again, thank you, Dimas, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Okay. We hope you stay safe and see you again.